TD Ameritrade's Investor Movement Index shows another strong month. In fact, it was the second strongest month-over-month reading since it started in 2012. What were you seeing in terms of trends?
Well, I think one of the interesting things is as the S&P's been near unchanged basically the whole year, one of the things we saw was people selling some strength and buying some weakness. What I mean by that, Jill, is let's look at Facebook and Twitter. They tend to go into the same conversation all the time. Well, Facebook got a couple of upgrades last month. Facebook had a nice month. It rallied. Our clients who had accumulated Facebook earlier in the year sold a lot of their Facebook positions. And Twitter, a stock that's been, pretty beaten up, and our clients turn around buying Twitter. So it's very interesting to me how that's starting to work.
If you look at some of the other net buys, energy, you saw a lot of strength in Chevron and Chesapeake. And if you take a look at oil today, it's, the underlying commodity impacts these stocks just tremendously.
And to be honest with you, Jill, I think that's what it's all about. Many clients don't necessarily want to go out and play the futures market, or they don't want to invest in one of the ETFs. So a way for them to synthetically play the oil market is through a company that's heavily influenced by oil, and a company they still think is a good company, although it may be temporarily affected by oil prices, will still hold up in the long run, and I think that's exactly what you see in those types of stocks.
They were buying J&J and Procter & Gamble, which is interesting because those were dividend buys, and everyone is always looking for yield, but they continue to sell GE.
Well, but if you look at the whole year, GE was accumulated late last year, early this year, when GE, it seemed like, was never going to get out of that 22, 23 range. As GE has rallied over the last couple of months, they've been a seller of GE. Along with GE, you've seen sellers of Bank America and Citigroup. Bank America and GE are two of the top 10 holdings of TD Ameritrade clients. So it's, again, people selling some strength, taking off some of the risk. Personally, I actually like to see that when we get a stock that rallies and then maybe sits in a range like Bank America has done. People come out to sell part of their position and see if they can redeploy the money elsewhere.
Are you surprised that they're selling financials even with interest rate hikes, for the most part, imminent?
Yeah, interest rate hikes are imminent, but again, I think it also goes back to the fact that we're kind of stuck in this limbo zone.
Right.
And I think as long as we have uncertainty, people are going to take off some risk. I don't think people necessarily took off their entire positions, et cetera, but had they accumulated some stock earlier in the year, it's a chance to take some profits there and still hold their core position.
Let's get your outlook for the second half, because historically this was really one of the tightest ranges that we've seen in the S&P. Do you expect that to continue? Well,
we've seen this 2070 to 2130 range since early April. Really, everything that we've settled so far this year, if you think about every piece of bad news, it's always kind of settled to the upside. At some point, it may settle to the downside. Even the Greece situation from last night as we speak looks to be settling to the upside. So I think you have to trade the range until it's broken significantly, and there's no reason to think that it won't. Now, interest rate hikes may change that picture, and as we know, as of this morning, there's about a 63% probability that they'll raise at least a quarter in the September meeting. But again, until we actually see it, you can't really trade on it. A lot of people have not done well trying to predict exactly what the rate hike day is going to be.
It's been a good environment for stock pickers, though.
It has been a very good environment for stock pickers, because even though the S&P 500 is near the unchanged mark for the year, there's been a lot of stocks that are up or down 10%. And again, as we go back to where we started this from, it makes me happy to see people taking some profits on something like Twitter Facebook, to redeploy towards a Twitter.
All right, thanks very much, JJ.
Always a pleasure, Jill.
For The Street in New York, I'm Jill Malandrino.